Just session.
We gotta get a second?
Second.
Always moved and second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now in open session for contract negotiations, ESP. When we left off at our last meeting, we were going to have Norm and Dana get together on the correct wording and so forth for information that we had all agreed to along that line, and have it ready for us today so that we can get that out of the way, and then we can move on to some more of the items that exist in terms of contract years, insurance, and salary. So I'll open the floor up so that we can hear the language for the items that we have all agreed and disagreed on to be final at this point. Who wants to go first?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay. We went through your tentative agreements. There are a couple changes, a couple things that are left off, and one which the board thought we were more clear on whether or not we were conceptually willing to have something in the contract regarding it, and that's your first one, which is your Article 8, 8.6,
Okay.
the new one, which is,
Yeah, that was just based on that general discussion we had the last meeting.
right, you know, the board is still inclined, as we went through, I think, at length last time, to have it be part of the Rule 4500, have it be part of the training issue, you know, bringing it up in training on Rule 4500, and setting an expectation that as part of those debriefings, that the paraeducator would be involved in those debriefings. However, the board is not, at this point in time, willing to have that become part of the agreement between the parties. So there is that one.
So how would you summarize the board's position on that?
It may be a long summary, so let me
What's
go. It may be a long summary, so let me go with that, which is that
Okay.
the board's expectation and the board's understanding of Rule 4500, which is the rule regarding restraint and seclusion, is that a debrief meeting between staff members has to occur. Clearly, a staff member who is part of that debriefing should be considered to be a paraeducator who's working with a child. And it is the board's expectation that rule will be followed, and that the paraeducator will be part of that debriefing session. The board was concerned hearing what the issues were from your group, that it seems that that's not happening consistently. And so therefore, the board has taken the step of addressing that with the Director of Special Education regarding the training issues and making sure that people are in fact complying with Rule 4500. So that's the
So
concern.
the board wants to handle that through just a administrative policy change?
There are policies that exist that also deal with some of the other other issues that you brought up regarding safety issue, but yes, from dealing with it from an administrative sort of regulation issue. Rule 4500 is also the AOE's rule. I mean, I have to put
Yeah.
out, that's a state regulation that deals specifically with that.
But does 4500 concern itself primarily with restraining students? Because we had this discussion while you were caucusing, but it seems that one of the problems we have is injury or which is not the result of during a restraining of a child, where it's somebody gets kicked, bit, somebody gets thrown at them. So it's not really a restraint situation. But it is clearly
It's an issue if you're talking about when an incident report is in fact filed, right?
Yeah,
And
what
what you
we're
propose.
proposing is when when that happens, that the para would be, or the employee would be involved in a meeting to deal with that behavior. But,
No, and I think that the board I think it's clear, actually now more so, that the board understands that. I would say that from the board's perspective, it's sort of the same issue, which is if you're talking about an incident report action that happens, which I would assume is what these are, right? Is if a student hits you, if a student bites you, if a student spits on you, there's going to be an incident report. That it's the board's expectation that from a best practice perspective, there'd be a debrief. And so the board would be handling that through their administrative policy as well.
Does the board have the policy for that, or is that going to be changed?
It has to be, I think, it's a conversation with the director of special ed about the best way of putting that forward, but it should be, there isn't one that currently says exactly what I just said to you.
Okay, yeah, because
Which
that's our
is-
concern, is that there are times that there is injury that occurs, and it could be an instant meeting, but again, there's no contact with the people involved. And the incident, yes, it goes to Central and everything else, and it goes on the child's record, but there is no debriefing of the parties involved.
Yeah, and
Like with 4,500, yes, they're supposed to, we were just reviewing that rule ourselves, and that's also to check to see if proper procedures, and there's reports to the state if somebody does so many restraints and everything else, we know them, but that's a concern that when the restraint isn't done, because it's like an example of a rock being thrown and whacked in somebody's head, on purpose because the student's mad at them, or the chair being thrown at them. That's a concern, and yes, we will write up an incident report for it. We will fill out an accident report for ourselves, but that's where it ends. Nobody ever meets with us, and that's our concern.
I think that the board team is very mindful of that concern. I think from the board's perspective, and we had a discussion about this, there are other districts that I deal with that have made it part of their procedures for incident reports. That there is that follow-through where at least the administrator is coming in and having the conversation with the individual who was injured. In terms of providing the feedback with the teachers and the IEP team, making an assumption that a student may be on an IEP, very well may not be a student on an IEP, that there should be that conversation. And the board is in agreement that that conversation should happen, but feels that it's not appropriate to be driving that discussion through the contract, rather doing it through procedures and policy instead.
Madam Carmichael, if you are still in the building, could you come to the office? Thank you.
okay. Did you have a chance to go over the other?
Yep, we did,
Okay.
and on Article 2, my recollection was, and we had been having a conversation regarding, I'm sorry, in Article 16, your number 2, on the FMLA, PMFLA, is, it seemed that there was the addition of the concurrent use of FMLA, PFMLA shall not apply when an employee is receiving workers' compensation benefits. It is, and it has been, the district's policy that when an employee is out on workman's comp, that they also in fact are using up their FMLA time for that as well.
I think I took this, I had some information, but I also reviewed because my understanding was they were going to be the same as the teacher's contract, except for obvious wording change, where we had to say employee instead of teacher. I think but you think I made an error around workers' comp?
Yeah, it is definitely not what the practice is currently, or has been over the last, I can't even tell you how many years, Norm.
Okay.
So I
So let me
think
just,
that's something that needs to be removed or, checked on and removed.
so you think now that the concurrent use does apply during workers' comp?
Yes, yes, and
Right.
I've had occasion this year to have to explain that to outside
I'll
people.
check that.
So minus that one section, the board agrees to Article 16, Section 16.9.
All right, I'll check that. Other than that, it's okay?
Yep.
All right.
Did you have a question?
Are we going to change that word may?
Yeah. Yep, we're gonna get to that. I'm just going through them. Article 20, we agreed to having that withdrawn, thanks.
Yeah.
Article 21, Section 21.3, on the second sentence of 21.3, which currently reads, "Employee requests for vacation days may require the following notice to the employee supervisor." We would ask for the removal of the word "may," and that we have it that require the following notice to the employee supervisor. The paragraph after what's outlined in terms of the notice requirement, we think deals with the issue of if there's a sort of a late entry into the notice.
I think
issue.
that's why as we talked about it, I changed that, I think it was shall to may, that the notice might not always be required. Because as I understood it this is the amount that can be required to have vacation, but there might be an instance where an employee could make a request and it wouldn't be denied because it had been made 3 days in advance, be denied for some other reason. I mean, that was my intention anyway. But I did make a change there because I thought it was consistent with what our discussion about the vacations, that we need the notices so that there could be planning, but if a person asks for a vacation day and the supervisor has no objection, it shouldn't be denied because you didn't give me notice 3 days before.
Right, and we've
Right.
got.
That was our-
Right, and so in the paragraph, which is after your block of the notice
Yeah.
requirements, in that second sentence, vacation requests that are made without the appropriate notice may be approved at the discretion of the supervisor. We felt covered that instance that you're
Okay.
talking
Right.
about. And so, we think that it has
So-
that little escape clause that you're talking about in that
All right.
essence.
So the change would be in what, the second sentence?
The second sentence of the first paragraph above the block, which is that it should just be employee requests for vacation days require the following notice to the employee supervisor, and then leaving the remainder with that sort of escape clause that if you can't get it in time.
So if I change may to shall in the second sentence, then
We
I'm
just figured the removal of.
I'm okay?
If you just remove may would work too.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Vacation days, okay. I got you.
Well, lawyers like shall and may, if you remove it, it's
No, that's
clearer
okay.
to everybody else, I think. We did also have a question for clarification here. We had, at the onset of our negotiations, had a lengthy conversation regarding the fact of having all para-educators under the SVSU umbrella, regardless of what their funding
Oh,
stream
yeah.
was. And we had thought that we had reached an agreement regarding that. So I bring that forward again. That is still something that the board has out there as a proposal.
And your proposal is that all paraeducators be SVSU employees,
Right,
right?
right.
Okay. I remember we talked about that.
And
I don't recall them, well,
I don't
I
think we
better,
came to an agreement
let me
about it.
recheck.
There was concern about switching from.
we'll
It
caucus.
seems a very, very long time ago we've discussed that.
The very beginning.
Yeah, that's because everybody said, that sounds good.
Well, I think there was a concern about, the biggest concern, I recall that was the idea, again, building job changes, procedure for buildings, that the fear was that a paraeducator, say, that works up in Shasberry, all of a sudden going to be say, okay, you're an SVSU para, we're going to put you over in Pownell. And a lot of times people apply for a job because of their location And so I think that was the concern on our end, was the
Do we know how many paras are not SVSU employees now? Most are now, right?
Most are now, and to be honest with you, more than likely,
Kindergarten paras, some paras have Monument, they're BSD.
Are or are not?
are not. I would suspect that the Bennington School District probably has a couple.
So kindergarten paras are not included?
No. we are not
kindergarten
SVSU.
paras.
Anyone else that you're,
And usually,
No.
sometimes the intensive needs paras in buildings like support centers or reflection centers or whatever they're called are not, they're usually the schools.
There also would be Section 504 para educators, which, because that is a local funds issue, so they would be more. So if you have a child on a Section 504 plan, however, we're saying that if there is one that is a specific school district employee, that it should be pulled into the SU.
That was on the Article 11.3
Right.
that we
Yeah.
did that.
I have actually the counts on that. We have 10, 16 BSD pairs altogether who are not part of the SVS.
How many?
16.
16?
Don't make 17. MAU has got 14. Town has 4. And Shaftesbury is 2. So then the remainder are all, yeah, SVSU.
What was the last one I had?
Shaftesbury
16?
was 2.
How many?
Two.
2.
Town was 4.
There's 37 of them. And what's the rest?
Okay.
17 BSD, 14 MAU, 4 Pownell, 2 Shaftesbury.
How many SVSU paras are there?
SVSU, we have this.
At least 100.
Now, this is
Six.
pretty close to 127.
So everybody was just about there already, and that was what we pretty much is there. So this shouldn't take a lot to go ahead. Based on my notes, I thought everybody was nodding yes back here based on the minutes from way back, and I was trying to find the date for the minutes, but I got the minutes here, but I can't find the initial date for it on the front page because it didn't. Let's see,
Okay.
September 20.
So we have the recognition issue. Your position is that 8.6 is not acceptable, as we wrote it. Statutory leave, we've checked the issue of concurrent benefits with workers' comp. And 21.3 is okay with the deletion of the word may in the second sentence.
Right.
Let me caucus for a few minutes and just see if we can, where we are on those, and that will help us, I hope, to move ahead.
Sounds great.
Okay,
Can we,
how much time do you want this up?
we'll just take a few minutes, 10 minutes maybe, or
Okay.
less?
So can I get a motion to adjourn for executive session for
So
contract
moved.
negotiations according to item 3 on the agenda? Been moved and second, all in favor? Aye, okay. We'll
Okay.
be back in 5:14, and we are back. Can I get a motion to come out of executive session?
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we are now in open session for ESP contract negotiations following a brief caucus.
Okay.
And Norm, you
Yes.
have the floor.
We reviewed your proposals. The association is still concerned about having something in the contract dealing with violence against employees. we will consider that, we'll study that a bit and see what we can, if we can come up with, we're getting to understand what you don't accept. We're still looking for what will be accepted to provide some protection for employees. The statutory leave, I'll check the language of the teacher's contract, because I believe we agreed they'd be the same, about the workers' compensation line, and the vacation time is acceptable. The issue of the employee the recognition and all employees being SVSU employees, I was just looking at the recognition clause, and it would seem, I have to look at this and maybe consult, but I think what happened when when the district moved all the special ed employees is they either laid them off from their current job and rehired them by the SU. But I think what happened was it was just a seamless transition. They just, as they came up for the next contract, they just gave them contracts that were for the SVSU and not for BSD or MAU and so on. But I'm not suggesting we do that, but I told the team that I would look into that. But I think that's probably the proper procedure, that people would get essentially laid off as a BSD employee, rehired as an SVSU employee. The concern, as you know, is the possibility that if you're an SVSU employee, you can get moved from one school to another. And of course, that's one advantage. The advantage to the employees is it may, for some people, improve their job security. Because especially if you're the only Pownell and para, you're pretty vulnerable. So anyway, we'll look into those two issues and see if we can come up with something that will resolve them.
Norm, and to your point about when special ed was consolidated at the SU level, you are correct. And the typical way of doing it is somebody does in fact get a RIF notice from their local board, and they get ripped out, they come in, they get a contract, they get the same, they don't lose any of their accumulated benefits or anything of that nature, their seniority.
I think
the
it was,
contract is pretty straightforward.
well, I vaguely remember it because I remember that people said, I'm now an SVSU employee, and we talked about it, and I think we consciously said, okay, and nobody did anything about it, because it seemed like a move with special ed. It was a move in the direction that we were all going in. Then it, of course, is, I know in a number of districts, it's having the majority of employees, SVSU employees, and only a handful that are still employees of the individual school districts. Okay. So, what are the other issues? We were going to talk a bit about economic issues, I think, today. Have you had a chance to react at all to the association's proposals? Or I know that you didn't make a proposal on healthcare, although I don't think we did either.
We didn't. That was what was supposed to happen.
I know the teachers have been working on it, but they haven't, as far as I know, they haven't reached an agreement yet. But maybe, unless they did yesterday.
I wasn't there.
No, we didn't do one, but we want to do that, and we want to be real efficient at doing it, and not go through the summer with it out there. And so we want to try to make sure we make an effort to resolve this issue and proposals.
What seems to be working out generally on the issue of the new health plans are several concepts. One is that we're dealing now with premiums, and we're dealing with out-of-pocket expenses. And that's kind of bounced around in different places. But with the staff contracts and the substantially lower earning power of the staff people, I've suggested to the staff associations that they have to really deal with the out-of-pocket expenses. That many of our members could not afford every January 1st paying a substantial deductible or a substantial out-of-pocket expense. And we're addressing that by proposing to school boards that they cover out-of-pocket expenses by using a health reimbursement account. As I'm sure you know, there seem to be two vehicles. One is a health savings account, one's a health reimbursement account. We think that boards can provide employees better coverage with a health reimbursement account, where if the money isn't used for health care, it stays with the school board, than with the health savings account. So we're looking at trying to address the payments for premium and for out-of-pocket expenses as percentages, so we can look at multi-year contracts with some stability. A health reimbursement account versus instead of a health savings account, with a third-party administrator. And as I'm looking at it, a small or no out-of-pocket payment by the employees, with a tendency to look more at the premium, which would allow employees a regular cost of health insurance than, for example, the Gold CDHP plan, which requires a $3,600 out-of-pocket deductible every January before the plan pays anything. And for most of our employees in this bargaining unit, will deny a lot of them health insurance.
That's like
because they won't
almost
be
a
able to
quarter
pay
of the
it.
salary for some,
Yeah.
depending. I mean,
So-
we don't make a bunch of money.
What I've been trying to do in different districts is, we know what we're paying now. The board knows what it pays. Most districts have focused on the Gold CDHP plan, which is the least expensive, highest deductible. But that seems to be the direction everybody is going in. And for example, I made a proposal in Springfield for the support staff, which I suspect won't be accepted. But the proposal was for the board to pay 95% of the premium of the Gold CDHP plan, pay 100% of the out-of-pocket costs, and the board was still going to pay less for the new insurance than it paid for the current insurance. So that gave me a sense of how they've reconstructed these insurance plans. And as you know, if you've had any time to look at them, there's a substantial difference in the shifting of cost from the insurance company to the employees. And VHI looks like it costs less this year, but it really doesn't. It costs more, but it's just assuming that the employees and the insured will pay more. So we're somewhat familiar with what the teachers are trying to do, but realistically, they're in a different economic position than we are. And so we need to look at that from the point of view of our folks that probably have an average earning of $15 an hour or something like that, as opposed to the teacher earning. We made a proposal on wages. The theory on that is we have a step schedule with longevity increases. We feel strongly that people who are working, who are newer, who we hired at lower rates, have a right to try to gain that and move towards the rate that's paid for the career level employees, and a wage increase. And as if you reviewed our proposal, we also proposed some other changes. Nothing is quite as dramatic as the changes in health insurance and salary. But what we hope we can do is put together some type of a comprehensive economic package that we can get an agreement before the end of the school year.
So, did we get
Pardon?
that? what you're talking
A
about?
long time ago.
No, it's not, the wage proposal's in our proposal, but the health insurance proposal is not. I don't think either one of us, at the time we made the proposal, had much of an idea of what was going to happen. And of course, the lead has now been done by the teachers, because they've been bargaining over this now for several months. But I think, because this is being bargained as I think you know, every school district contract, both teacher and support staff in the state, is being renegotiated right now, mainly because of health insurance. And there are, in this area, which I have 50 school districts, I don't know how many, 21 contracts, but only 3 contracts have even come to close to a tentative agreement on health care. So it's starting to show us where things might be going, but we don't have a great deal of information yet. But I guess our move would be to make you a specific healthcare proposal and see what happens.
Okay. I think you wouldn't be surprised to understand from the district's perspective that that the board's proposal is going to look in terms of language and numbers and how it's laid out as the teacher's proposal does. The board has spent a great deal of time contemplating this, and just to put this sort of into perspective regarding where we're at with health insurance. For this year, the health insurance premiums went up 7.9% from the year prior, and out of that, the employer covered the whole 7.9. We absorbed
You mean in the last year?
in fiscal year 2017.
For this year, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
The-
I agree.
The board absorbed that. And so from fiscal year 2010 until fiscal year 2017, VHI's premiums went up 36.4%, and the board absorbed 34.02% of those increases. Health insurance is an incredibly expensive benefit. We think it is a valuable benefit for our employees. But it is one that, quite frankly, fiscally needs to be managed. And there is, from the board's perspective, looking at things from a comprehensive financial position, because what gets put towards one, whether wages or health insurance, removes it from being put towards the other, from the board's perspective. There's a finite amount here that we are accessing, and we feel that we can, in fact, access. So I wouldn't be surprised to see from the board, I want to make it very clear regarding what the proposal is going to look like. It's not going to be, I can do it out if it makes you happier to see a percentage. I can put a percentage next to what the dollar amount is going to be, but it is something the board is looking at as a dollar amount, defining what a dollar amount contribution is from the board, as well as what the employee's dollar amount contribution is. And I think we can quite readily deal with that. I will say that the board, at least for the next fiscal year, when we're talking July 1st to December 31st, and then you have a switch January 1st, 2018, going forward from what plans you're on, I think the board is prepared to be able to give you something which will be covering the July 1st to June 30th, 2018, at least in terms of the health insurance. We can also have a conversation regarding pushing that a little bit farther out, but that again is something, we don't know what those numbers are, so there are issues with determining what the health insurance premiums will be at that point in time, but we can do that as well. To be very blunt, from our perspective, from what your wage request was, and in light of what the health insurance is that both, quite frankly, are not tenable to do, and to have the board absorb that. So we are hoping that we can have a constructive conversation regarding both of those together, because as I said, they do in fact impact each other. I don't know in terms of how long you think you need to structure out getting a proposal to us. regarding it. We can have a conversation regarding, I believe, what our initial proposal is, are we?
Yep.
Although I can put it out there for you in terms of what we're looking at, and I can give it to you in writing at a later, after this, at a later date. But we've looked at it and we've broken up in terms of, with the health insurance, which, looking at the 2 6-month periods. So July 1st, 2017 through December 31st, 2017, we're not talking about changing what the contribution levels are. So the number I'm going to give you is that for a full year, let me make sure I get this out for you guys, right? Sorry.
So July
For July 1st.
July 1st
2017 through December
December
31st, 2017, the status quo of what you have now will be the status quo for that time period.
Okay.
So what that boils down to is, for those of you who are on the single plan, is that the board right now, for the first 6 months of the year, contributes $3,883 towards your plan. The board will continue for the second 6 months to do an additional $3,883.
Is that for
That's-
family?
That's a single plan.
That's a single. Oh, that's,
There is, and the board is not contemplating making a change to this, there is, if you work under 215 days in a year, you get single. If you work 215 or above, you can access either the 2-person and the family in addition to
We
the,
don't get 2-person.
are you proposing a change in that?
Are you gonna add 2-person?
no, we're not
Okay.
proposing a change in terms of what the coverage is.
The paras aren't offered the 2-person.
That would be
You're-
something at
yeah,
our own expense.
But
Pardon?
I think they have to be now, though.
They have to pay.
it's,
Under the law, don't you have to now?
No,
No.
no.
school year is up to 215
Up to
15 days
215
a
days,
year,
Yeah,
and
compared to
full-time
the
or
we don't
calendar
get
years
2%.
over, 215 or over.
Right, yeah, that's what
That's
I was
what the
saying. So
contract
200, right, 200, we're not
And
proposing.
that, you're not
any change.
proposing a change?
We are not
No,
proposing a
okay.
change
Oh, that
to,
would be nice.
That's
the-
July
to the
1
breakdown.
to December 31st.
so those people who 215 and above,
Yeah.
from July 1st, 2017 through December 31st, 2017, the people who can access the 2-person plan, the 6-month employer payment is $7,634, and that's what is current for the first 6 months of this year. The family employer payment is $10,233.
Maybe you can send me those in writing,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna get them
I
right.
can do that as well.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get them right. But it's, what I understand is your proposal is the status quo, but you're gonna phrase it in dollars and not percentages. Okay? I got it.
So, I mean, I can
Or they
send,
basically would be staying with the current percentages now, anyway, right?
Yeah. It works out that way.
it works out to staying with, so you won't see from July 1st, 2017 to December 31st, 2017, a change in how it's managed.
Okay.
It's then gonna go by year, isn't it? Isn't the new
It
health
is.
insurance year now gonna be
Be
January
January
1st to
Right,
December?
so that's the
So they're gonna
issue.
screw up every school budget over that. Yeah.
Pretty much.
How thoughtful of them to do that.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so
So
then,
we can get, but I want you to understand, I mean, I can, like I said, put a percentage next to it if that
no, I
makes.
understand.
But the way that we are discussing it and expressing it is in a dollar amount.
Dottie, I just want to clarify, we do offer 2-person and family
Not
to
the
the
paras.
pairs. Yeah, we do. I have the benefit sheet right here.
Good, because.
It can be offered, but we have to pay
You
it.
have to pay the
Right,
difference, right?
right.
It's the same as the family.
Yeah, you're able
So
to
you
do
can have
that.
Right,
family,
we
or you
don't,
can
and
pay
we don't
the...
bring home a paycheck.
Yeah, it's.
Okay,
But
so,
we do
astronomical.
offer that as an option.
Yeah.
That's valuable.
Did I give you back your sheet, or did I steal your sheet?
Panicked me for a second there. I know we've been telling
Do you
you
want the
to
paper?
pick it.
Yeah, you offer, but it's out of reach for us.
Okay, but I
Everybody
mean,
else that works more than
I have
190,
multiples.
they
It's
get a nice deductible and,
Yeah.
but
Right.
and we're the highest, to stop.
so just wanted to make sure that it got out there that the plans are offered, it's just that
It's
the money
unattainable for
values
us.
don't make sense for you, so, okay.
It's unattainable.
It is unattainable
By
for us.
25 days, right?
Okay.
One of my colleagues that did that, she would get like $10, $20 in her paycheck
What's
per
that?
week.
There are
after
people that do
family
it.
expenses were taken out for insurance. And
Understood.
All right.
So, I don't, we are supposed to meet when again?
9th,
The
May
ninth.
9th.
May 9th.
May 9th?
Only Tuesday?
Yeah, they're always Tuesdays.
Okay.
Which is nice. Tuesdays are good.
You want to pick another date after that now?
So,
Over
What's
here.
our next?
May
May
9th.
9th?
May
That's why I
9th.
just.
We've got a 7 on May 9th?
Did we do it on 3:30, is that what you said?
4 o'clock.
We've been doing it 4,
4 to
Four to-
6:30.
they can
4
make
to
it
6.
better at 4.
Right, so we're starting with them at 4?
Tuesday.
Well,
the
we usually
20th.
start down at 4:30. We do our first half
Okay,
hour.
so I have it at 4, that's why I just want to make sure I have the right
Right.
time.
The 23rd would be 2 weeks from now, just kind of scheduled.
if, yeah, it's just that,
Didn't we,
Right.
yeah.
all of the things that we want to cover, that's the, I mean, we just talked about one of them, is the other items that we want to be on the table. Since we're moving out of the other items, we need to move on and talk about the life of the contract as well. So you'll be aware.
And there's other things that were in your proposal I don't think we've touched.
Yeah,
either,
there's
like
still other stuff.
Single dental, you
Yeah.
guys were looking for.
Increasing when somebody retires for the unused sick
The
days.
payout of the sick days,
So,
So we're looking at the 23rd?
adding
Can you
brother-in-law,
do the
sister-in-law,
23rd?
nieces and nephews.
I can't, but I don't think, because I'm going to nature's classroom for a week with 6.
So we have May 9th, what are you suggesting?
We have May 9th, can you do the 23rd?
I know
Can you all do the 23rd?
I can.
I can't.
Leon can.
I can't.
20,
You start.
May
Uh,
23rd.
what's that?
May is a
May 23rd is what they're offering.
Well, I mean, we can come up with,
May
if you have something
23rd
else.
is Tuesday, right?
I can tell you,
Yeah, I can do the.
I can't, so.
Anybody
I
here?
can.
Unless
I can do it.
are you all
I mean, they can
comfortable
meet.
with that?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
Are you
can.
comfortable with that as well?
Sure.
Because I know you're participating and everybody's comfortable
I
with that?
rubbed them enough, so.
Fran, can you do that?
May,
The 30th is open, is that too?
And that's May 23rd?
Yeah, because I can't do the 30th.
Oh, you can't do the 30th.
I'm selling a house, so it's not gonna happen.
I already committed that
Okay,
day.
so I need to,
Well, just tell me
Is
where.
that too much? May 23rd.
May 23rd. Did you all, is that workable for you? I'm sorry.
23rd,
It's
Yeah.
that works for me, I haven't.
Okay, on everybody else?
Couldn't make it.
What, are we gonna keep the same time?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, because.
4 o'clock.
Then you guys
That was a,
meeting
that
and-
was a request from Mary.
Right, well, you
That's okay
guys,
with me, I just,
I've been able to get here at 4 o'clock because the
Well, after
attendance
school
is
program
low.
is, oh no, it ends that week.
Yours does.
so
Yeah,
we're planning to meet with the board at 4 on,
So we're gonna meet
May
at
9th.
And at 6:30, no, you meet, the board will meet at 4.
Join
Meet
you guys
you at
at 4:30.
4:30,
Okay,
and that's a 4:30 to 6:30.
Do you think, Norm, it's something that you can send me electronically, your proposal, before
I will.
we get there? That way I can send it out to everybody and
I will.
they can see it in
The proposal they
writing.
gave us last time, the original.
That was, yeah, that original
It's
proposal I
the
see
health
was in,
insurance.
that was just the.
Oh, the health
was
insurance
just-
proposal, okay.
And then we'll just add Fran to the email. because we like-
Okay, so we have May 9th and May 23rd, both meeting with the board at 4:30, right?
Correct.
Good. And I will send you, I'll send you a summary of the association's proposal
Okay.
before the meeting.
Okay, and I will do the same to you as well.
I
That
hope.
way you all can, no, that way you all can see it in writing.
Yeah, no.
And we
No,
can
we-
be more
we-
efficient about it.
We'll do what we can to try to speed things up a bit.
All right.
All right.
So anything else that anyone?
So any feeling about the length of the contract? We had mentioned that
We
earlier.
should continue working since we're scheduled to 6:30.
Oh, yeah,
So
well,
kind of
that's-
What are you
We're
gonna
scheduled
propose?
till 6:30?
Well, we've got
Yes.
proposals sitting in front of us.
we do schedule this to 6:30.
Oh.
Right.
I thought it was six.
And that's what we talked about last time we were here, so.
We never stayed there, sir.
What,
The agenda said 6:30.
Okay.
yeah, and that's what we had did last time.
So we're wondering if you want to, if you're willing for a 3-year contract.
That-
Two or three?
Three, we pulled 3 out.
Depends on what's in the contract.
Well, we would
that's
like to
our-
go for a
That's
3-year.
what we
We would
were
like to go for a
recommending,
3-year
okay,
contract.
so both parties would like to go for 3, we can make that happen.
Yep.
We'll see.
All right, yes, well,
Okay, that's what it,
All right.
it's saying, that if everybody want 3, we're gonna make it happen. That's- Okay.
Move mountains, Leon, aren't you?
So that's a given, we just need to work the details out behind the 3-year contract.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, I know it.
Okay, so that's
So it gives us something to keep working toward.
Yeah.
As long as everybody is saying that's what you want,
Yes.
we'll
It's
know
nice to
what
have-
we need to do out there.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, what was the other item out there?
Who are we looking under, Florida or us? Other items out there?
Well, that we haven't covered that need to be discussed.
I think we had a proposal initially regarding the retirement payout. I think we actually
And I
had,
think it was to keep,
I think we had actually increased the retirement.
No, you basically had said to keep it, we had asked for an increase, and you guys had said to keep it, I think, at 30.
Right, and that's right, we wanted to keep that retirement dollar amount,
And we asked
let's
for
see.
it to be
35.
35.
Yeah. So you're gonna accept that, okay, good.
And it was, I think, us that put out that, oh, all right. It's, you guys, it was number 12, and us, it was number 9. Okay.
So we did, but I think they were.
which is 9.7?
What's the date on that, Marion?
What do you mean, the date?
On your papers?
On the proposals, these are ones from August 20th, 2016. These were the original proposals.
Mine said 520.
So 19.7, you proposed that it go to, it currently right now
Is at 30.
is at 30.
Is that 30?
We're we're proposing a $5 a day increase for that severance amount.
We need to cost that out again. It's not something that comes into play all that much.
Well, but,
The rather minimal cost items, that would, I mean, obviously depends on the number of people retiring. We also made a proposal on 20.5. Currently, if an employee takes over a temporary job at a higher wage rate, they're not paid the higher rate until after 7 days. We're asking that they be paid at the higher rate for the days that they do that job. That would seem, I can't tell you how many days a year an employee is assigned to a higher paid job, but the language is in 20.5 of the agreement now. We're basically proposing to remove the 7 days, and so the employee's paid for all the time he or she is assigned at the higher rate.
That basically came about with like maintenance if the foreman's out or something, and one of the maintenance people take over, and they do the foreman's job for 7 days, and they're still getting paid their wage.
Is your proposal also to do it the other way too? If you're an intensive needs para and you go and you fill in for a regular para that
They usually doesn't.
Take a drop.
you do a drop?
Never happens that way. I don't think.
Just curious.
The other items of probably minor economic impact, we made a proposal that the district provide or allow domestic partner coverage for insurance. Since that doesn't include we didn't propose a requirement that that be paid for, it would simply be available. Two other items, one was in bereavement coverage, the association proposed the addition of, under that coverage, to cover the death of a brother-in-law, sister-in-law, or a niece or nephew. And we did make a proposal under sick leave that an employee that had reached the maximum accumulation on sick leave and therefore had additional days they would lose at the end of the year be paid for those days at their regular rate of pay. I don't know how many people, I'm sure some of our more experienced people reach that level, and it would certainly, a payment for those extra days would simply guard against people who thought that they were just going to lose the days and they were just sacrificed. So those are the brother-in-law and sister-in-law, the severance pay, $5 a day increase, and domestic partner coverage were kind of the minor financial issues. We talked about, we still have an issue over overtime, which is the difference between overtime being paid after whatever the employee's regular hours happen to be, or 40 hours a week. And then the other items that are outstanding are bigger ticket items, of course, dental insurance, long-term disability. Of those two, long-term disability, I suspect, is the much less expensive issue. And it's less expensive because it doesn't apply very often, but members of this bargaining unit can become disabled like anyone else. And because health insurance is tied to employment, if you lose your job, you lose health insurance, and you're pretty much in deep trouble. Of course, the Trump administration will take care of you, but other than that, you've got to be concerned. So maybe at some point the district could review those minor items and see if there's anything we can move on there. I think they're all, I mean, as you look at them, they're all important to the association, or some members of the association, since we proposed them. But they also have minor economic impact, I think, on the district.
I don't think I have the same proposal. Mine was dated 5/20.
So is mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The one that was our original proposal was May 20th, 2016.
Okay, that's, I have the right one then.
Yeah.
But then we settled on the contract, so we had them, that's where you separated them out for us for, in
I may have done
August
that.
16th, where you did the separation.
Yeah, at some
Yes.
point, we wrote them as economic and non-economic.
Non-economic, that's what I'm looking
But
for.
that was
Yes.
just a
Yes, you do
revision of
have-
May 20th.
No. But no,
Not that that's an intent.
August 20th, you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, that's where they were separated to non-economic and economical.
Does the board have proposals? I mean, we've talked about some of the ones earlier, but that we need to address. We have the recognition issue, we have the overtime proposal.
And they both
Right,
have
there's the overtime.
retirement.
right. Well, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
cremation. It's just this.
Right.
Weeks away.
Had something about job descriptions,
Who did?
restrictions on the last 2 weeks of school year.
Yes,
Yeah.
restriction on using leave on the last 2 weeks of the school year, and I'm looking for it.
Which one is that?
I apologize.
These is, okay, I was just looking at it,
Oh, I got it,
16.2.
16.2B.
That actually is, it's something that I don't think, Norm, that you'll be surprised to hear, but we do bump into it quite frequently, which is during the last 2 weeks of the school year, that there is the mad rush to use personal days by some people. I'm not saying the whole bargaining unit by any stretch of the imagination, but that is something that tends to be, have a negative impact on, in terms of scheduling and getting substitutes.
But those days need to be approved by the central office.
From the central office to do it. Yep. They're asking for a clarification to just make it so that it's a little bit more cut and dry.
So a para would not be able to take a personal day at all the last 2 weeks of the school year? Is that what you-
Yeah, it says it needs.
Except when specifically granted by the superintendent.
Yeah, it says that.
So there is again that out to do it, which is that Superintendent Colkeen, or I
Right.
guess we could put designee if he's comfortable with that as well.
You know what the last
A
2
lot
weeks of
people
school were
have to
like?
leave And get, yeah, but it's not just that. That's when a lot of parents have to go pick up their children from college. And
Or there's a
move back home
graduation
and things
going
like
on.
that.
And
We
so,
have-
Or their kids' field trips, or things like that,
I think it's fine for the teachers, but for the paras, it's.
because we're not in charge of lesson plans or anything
Right,
else.
and I had a situation last year at the end of the year, and my principal said, oh, but you're not allowed to. I said, no, but we haven't agreed to that yet, and it was effective for the teachers.
Well, and what happens today for the teachers is they submit a request form for a personal day with a note on it that it's, this date, I need it for this reason, and then Jim reviews them and makes a determination.
And I think Jim
If
would be
it's-
very fair with that, but I'm going to tell you something that happened probably one of the first years that I was employed here. It wasn't the last 2 weeks of school, but it was the day before a holiday, and I was refused and could not bring my daughter to college because it was the day before a holiday for her to go, and I was refused. I mean, that was years ago, but those are the type of things that happen, and we worry about being refused. I've seen where people were getting married on a holiday weekend, and it was refused. And this is not Jim,
No.
Well,
but
it's a thing.
in
It's a
prior
different
administrations, it has happened,
Mm-hmm.
and this is why we don't want those restrictions.
yeah, but the school has to operate as well, and so.
So can the school make a determination? I mean, like our principal decide if it's something that we can afford
It's, they don't.
to have us out of the building?
I think that's in terms of
That's
the
what
conversation.
that's what they're proposing.
Well,
Yeah.
it says what the superintendent is doing it, so,
Superintendent is
I
not
mean,
the
it's a,
It should be the
The principal would be
The
the
mayor
first.
there.
Right.
we can,
Their school.
we can have a conversation with Superintendent Colkeen regarding how his viewpoint is, I think. And also the board's viewpoint
And I'll
on
be
whether or
honest
not
with
you
you, in
want to
June, right now, this month,
delegate.
I'm going to be taking personal days because I have a nephew's trial that I have to go to, that
Okay.
has been retried, and it's going to possibly run those last 2 weeks.
So that's separate, because that's not a personal day, it's a jury day.
It isn't.
No, she's going
No.
personal.
Oh, it's not for you? Oh, it's
And
not
no,
a jury
it
duty.
is for me to be there to support
Okay.
family.
So we wanted to look at that part, that's 16.2, in terms of social affairs, pleasure trips and employment, personal leave days should not be granted for those.
I mean, you're not
That's the
supposed
part
to
of-
have personal days for
That-
pleasure
right.
trips anyway.
That's exactly right. That's
That's the
the standard for a
16.2.
personal day. That's why you fill it out 3 days ahead of time. You have to have it filled out 3
We're not
days
going
ahead
to
of
the
time
ball
to make
games.
sure it's going to be approved.
No, on the personal day form, it tells you exactly what it's used for.
Yeah, it cannot be used for those things.
Okay.
So what?
For personal enjoyment, it's supposed to be, basically a personal day is supposed to be for something that cannot be changed at all. You know, it's a day that you have no other choice but to be there.
Yeah, you have a commitment, and
A commitment that can't be changed.
Is that?
So 11.6 as well, I just put this out there, is that we did add language regarding, well, first of all, clarifying, it's not the, it's the superintendent or his designee or her designee shall prepare a job description. So we clarified that it's not resting with each board to do that, and then we added job descriptions will not be specific to assigned location except for jobs at the Southwest Vermont Career Development Center. In other words, what is an intensive para in Bennington is an intensive para in Shaftesbury.
Right.
So it's not based upon school district or placement issues. It's based upon what job you're in. So that was just as a clarification on 11.6. Going back up at 11.3, we made a proposal regarding the assigning of employees to different employing units, but if we are going to,
Is that 11.3? Okay.
and this is talking about you have your para 1 and your para 2, or your para and your intensive para. And 11.4, we were proposing to remove the,
11.3.
the placement on the same step. It wouldn't be a loss in pay, but it wouldn't be the same step. In other words, if you're a para 1 or a para and you get ripped and you come back under that provision 11.4 as an intensive needs para, you would be bumping up the salary grid. I think that was the concern on that one, correct?
Yeah. We didn't want to hold
Right.
people back when we brought them.
Right, in other words, if you were making a step 10 on an intensive needs is different than a step 10 on a.
All right, could you say that again, because I'm confused here. Doesn't
So
make sense.
11.4, what we're saying is, where it plays out is if I am a regular, not an intensive needs para, and I am RIFed, and then I'm recalled to a position as an intensive needs para, because that may be what the position is that's open. If I was a step 10 as the para, in the para position, going to a step 10 for the intensive needs is different than a step 10 on the parish. So we're talking about removing
Step 4, it was 11.4.
11.4. Right. We proposed removing that.
yeah.
So there is some language that's somewhat clarifying in 11.3, but there is a change in 11.3 as well.
Right. So this is the time where we had, at least the initial plan was to take the original contract and insert in the sections and the language right inside the contract so that we can see that. This may not be a bad thing to.
Well, I think when we come up with what we're looking at, with your tentatives, to put it in there as well.
That's what we were trying to do, was put it in there so that everybody can see that this is what the strikeout is and what the new is, along that line, and then operate off of that.
Right. My assumption is that we also didn't touch base, but you were going to look into it regarding, we had talked about reporting of offenses and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Way back in the day, we had talked about that. Instead of seeing it in the banner, if you happen to know you get the DUI the night before, you come in and tell your employer the next morning. It has happened here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have found out that people have been incarcerated by the newspaper, as opposed by the employee. I will say, however, not recently, so I'm happy about that.
That's good.
It was many, many years. I've done- Yay.
That was 9.7.
Yeah, I didn't bring the contract with me.
That was
I
9.7.
believe there's a list in there of CDC
Yep, it's 9.7.
people that are under
Yeah,
the
9.7 was the first.
ESP contract, and the CDC would like to remove the office manager from this contract.
Oh, I don't know what section that is.
Oh, you
but
mean
that's-
under the
You
recognition
mentioned that
clause?
at the beginning, I think, Ed,
Okay, we
but
actually hadn't,
that was going to be a strikeout from the beginning, I think.
you have classified as administrative, paraeducational, and maintenance are in there. Excluded from the bargaining unit are seasonal or temporary employees working fewer than 100 working days, tutors, students. So we actually hadn't,
I'll find out what the issue was with the language and
No,
back
that's
to you.
9.7.
yeah, I think it's probably that she's a
was the
confidential
safety
employee,
thing.
is what they're trying to
Yes.
say. She's the principal's assistant,
Yes.
administrative assistant.
Superintendent.
I'm sorry, superintendent, director. Right?
Yeah.
It's a superintendent, right? Okay.
We had talked about that should go in policy, right?
What's that?
And what I was told was the union has already agreed to this, and Lori's not here to,
Yeah, but we can, we don't have a position anymore.
yeah.
Did you hear, Norm, what we're talking about? Which is, I think you might want to run it by Lori.
The group 3 with the CDC thing?
The 1.3 is that for the gentleman who also happened to sit on the CDC board, there was an understanding that the superintendent's administrative assistant who acts in the nature of being more confidential employee would be in fact excluded. But I think that's a conversation that you want to have. Is that correct, gentlemen? I wasn't
Right.
at your board meeting and where it was discussed, but that there was an agreement that position should be excluded as a confidential employee from the bargaining unit, but I wasn't there. And I think it would make sense to have a conversation with the superintendent of the CDC as well as Lori.
What's the current status?
Well, it's a very overbroad, 1.3 is an overbroad where it just says classified as administrative, so I think it captures
1.3 of the current contract?
of the
Yeah.
current contract, pretty much is like a vacuum cleaner and picks everybody up.
Yeah.
It is, administrative is, I couldn't, it's very much so. So there is that issue, which we're bringing forward.
Recognizes this for all employees in a seasonal temporary 100.
And the word administrative is what you wanted out of there.
Right, or you want the exclusion if what you're saying is that she's a confidential employee because she does things like prepares budgetary information or handles budgetary information.
So you want an addition,
We want in addition to the exclusions.
a 1.3 right at the bottom.
As only a lawyer would say it, correct, right?
And so in the
An
person you want to
exclusion.
add,
The exclusion that we're looking for is the administrative assistant to the superintendent of the CDC. And that is her title as
I don't know if that's the
administrative.
correct title now
We'll
or not.
we'll get the correct title, but
That's just.
I think that identifies the position.
So we'll
Yes.
just have to bring that, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I was gonna say there are three, all of the guys are.
In 1.3, you just want to change that definition?
Yeah, to have her excluded out, just as
to
a
have an additional
confidential.
exclusion.
It's adding an exclusion of the superintendent's administrative assistant. And I apologize, that was just mentioned recently.
But that's in 1.3, that's the, just
Right.
refers to the tech center.
Right. My understanding is that in terms of what her job duties are, she is in fact being utilized as,
Okay.
as a confidential employee. So it would seem appropriate to remove that.
Yeah. So,
Well, I was also not
Yeah.
articulating well, so.
just trying to give you anything else we can get out of the way today?
So
Well, should we caucus on some of these issues that you had just brought up to see if there's any decisions that can be made, or?
We can for 10 minutes and then come back and meet for 10 to 15 more.
I mean, there could be some that could possibly be,
I just.
I mean, you know, the health of it, like you're both gonna switch proposals on that, but all these other ones, there could be quick yes or no's, probably from us.
In terms of the ones, even though Norm classified them as being a minor financial, because you knew I was going to say that, we're going to have to cost out the dental insurance proposal as well as the long-term disability insurance proposal. Numbers, even with a small premium,
Adds up.
compound, so we'll have to cost that out. So those two, I would not suspect we're going to have an answer for you today.
But Simpson, they may have to have an answer. If you think you can have the answer to some. and
Well, I'm just
caucus.
thinking to use the time. I mean, it's up to you guys how you want to run this, but.
Well, we want the issues to be resolved, so if you have a feeling that you can actually get one off the books, we can get it off the books.
Are you
Well-
talking criminal background checks every year?
How did we freeze that out?
We don't, what section is that? That's not,
I know, I don't think I think we modified it.
10.12, criminal background checks.
No,
Current
it's,
employees and recalled employees. And automatic dismissal for sex offenders, which is fine, I mean.
Right.
But I'm just curious if that's an annual thing for current employees, and who's gonna pay for that?
if any of your background checks now that are being done are actually in fact paid for by the district is my understanding.
Should probably, because that changes.
What
I'm
would-
sorry.
Oh, never mind.
But I think, that, you know, there is a move, I have to say, and I have to get it for you, about having background checks for employees in a set time frame, whether or not it's a 3-year rotation, so we can talk about that. There is the one of, so you have employees who are grandfathered in, I suspect perhaps, with all due respect, that some of you may not have gotten background checks when you were first employed here. If for some reason, if you get RIFT, which would mean we'd go pretty high up your seniority queue, but if some reason an individual who hadn't had a background check was RIFT and then we recalled them, we were saying that we wanted to be able to do a background check on them because there has been a great many years that have passed.
That I understand.
Yeah.
Current employee.
Part of it is that you have employees who haven't been background. You
How
have
can
some who
that
have never
be?
had one, and so that's what we were
So
talking
that would
about.
be the grandfather employees, the employees that are further up the seniority line, right?
Right, you have employees
16
who,
years ago.
I have to go back and look exactly
Trying to see where
and
that
ask,
is.
and get clarification from these guys, but you have employees who have been within the last 3 to 5 years who have been fingerprinted, and we've done their background check against the vulnerable adult registry. Is that, I think that's the correct name, and the other one, the criminal registry. But you also have employees that haven't been within the last 3 to 5 years, and that is a concern.
How can
How does that
be?
happen? Because
How did
that's
that-
like a
Can't even be
procedure.
hired.
Because you haven't been in the
But
last,
I've been here 25 years.
right, you
prior.
haven't been in the last 3 to 5 years. But you do have, your employees, your current employees, yes, the ones who have been
Oh, okay.
coming
I thought you
on.
were saying
have
employees that
been.
you guys have just hired in
No,
the
no,
past
no.
3 to 5 years.
No, no,
and
no,
have
no.
not
No,
been.
what I'm
So
saying-
what are you
meant
talking
to.
Right,
about?
no, I'm sorry. So what I'm
Yeah.
saying is in the last 3 to 5 years, everybody who's gotten hired absolutely has, but you actually, in the last 3 to 5 years, have people who haven't. And I'm not saying that I think we'd find anything on you, but,
When did they start? Yeah, I know, that's what I said.
so,
She don't know you.
I think,
I was like 16 years and I had to get a background check.
yeah, I was 17, so I would say 17 years.
I can
So-
tell you, we have run into this issue before, and I'll just say it very quickly, of having an employee who was a long-term employee, and then ironically, it runs through the same story if I found out they were in jail through the newspaper.
Right.
So that tells you. So it has occurred in the past. And there was something, by the way, when the newspaper talked about an intervening event that we were not aware of, which would have been concerning
Are
for us as an employer to know about.
I'm just curious, are the teachers background checked as often?
They do it with the license
Because they have to get renewed every 5 years.
That's,
Yeah.
they
5
have,
years?
But it's not in their contract. That's a license
state
renewal.
it's a licensing
Licensure
issue.
thing.
No, okay.
Yeah.
So every 5 years, so
That's what
we
it is,
should
it's
be
5.
every 5.
7, isn't it?
7,
7 years for
7 years for
teacher.
teachers.
What was it?
Is it 7 years?
Teachers are checked every 7 years.
There's a change that, there's a new reg that,
regs-
that's what I'm saying, is I think the regs have changed for the teachers, where they have to be, I thought it was every 5.
And they can't use
That's right.
reciprocity from another district anymore. You got to go right to
You
the
gotta do it.
state. So I think with that change, it became 5. But we,
But we can check into that.
Yeah.
but
yeah, we want to
that's-
do it the same as teachers,
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Okay.
This is not teacher's
So
contract.
we've thrown out a lot of things here, and I just wanted to make sure we have,
The same thing's going on.
that we be on the same boat coming at the next meeting, and that we get all of those things resolved, that's all. And, you know, we've thrown out a lot of things. And so, May 9th, I think we're gonna meet again, whatever that date is.
May 9th. May 9th, then the
May
23rd.
9th. Because I thought every time that we would have been able to at least agree within the time frame and get these things out of the way that we're here. We got a lot of things to get in terms of insurance, the compensation, and the 3-year contract period to discuss in May and June, and then we're into the summer along
Right.
that line. And the contract in the end of June.
30th, yep.
And so, we really need to work to make an effort to resolve these issues,
You guys get a little more flexible and we'll be done in no time.
okay?
Do we want to make any meetings in June? Do we want to set any meetings in June?
The beginning?
Well, we can see how far we get May 9th, and then we got another meeting, and then we'll have to set meetings for June. At the next meeting, we can do that.
Sounds good.
But, yeah, I really don't want to be working over the summer for these
Neither do
things.
we.
I'm not done.
You don't have to.
We did it the last
We'll
time.
just break and go
We've done
October.
it many
Yeah,
times.
we don't, yeah, but you'll be without a contract and so forth along
not doing
that line. And so-
What?
We don't want to do that.
We don't wanna work, I don't wanna
No,
work over the
it's-
summer.
It's,
I'm working anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Well, I work 2 jobs over the summer, so.
I mean, these are things that's why I'm saying now, we know what they are. Again, we know what they were way back, and so there are some things that are gonna happen, and there's some that just not gonna happen.
That's right.
And so we can keep on talking about them as long as we want to, and they may not happen. And so somebody has gotta realize and say, you know, you gotta pick your battles as to what you really want to be successful, to make a move. That's all. We can't have all the things out there that we see. We just can't do it. And so I heard Norm talk about what was important, and I think we all heard what's important because of the status in which you were in terms of making sure healthcare is a real plus for you. And I'm saying, okay, but we gotta get these other things out of the way. And so once we start to do that, we get bogged down in all these other things, we can't move.
Right.
Yeah, I think though we're still envisioning that we're going to be talking about healthcare and wages next time too. Right.
And I'm understanding you both are going to be exchanging proposals on healthcare, am I correct?
Yep.
No?
And we're going to receive them so we can look at them.
And we're supposed to be.
Right, so
Yes.
that's a timing issue. I got that. Okay. Anything?
If anything else, it's 6:15.
It seems the longer we talk, the more issues that we get put on the table, so maybe we ought to
maybe we
just
should.
Well, we,
go home and bake. You have cupcakes to make and,
Well, that's for May 9th. I'm not
May 9th,
bringing them tonight.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but they'd be good.
but these were issues that I thought we had already
We didn't come up to any,
said
we
that
had
they were-
conversation.
I think
So-
they're relatively quick, though.
So, I mean, we stated the positions back here earlier along that line
Right.
and so forth.
And maybe if
And-
we're far enough ahead, on May 23rd, we can have a late meeting and.
Oh, wouldn't that be,
Be done. I love your optimism.
I said we weren't.
well,
Order
those
pizza
were the
so
old
we
days
could work
because we
late.
used to do that. If-
Oh, we
If
used
we
to
were
do that.
close on discussing a lot of
I'll get
issues,
some money from
we'd
my
be
dad.
here.
Yeah.
Remember that
So,
one guy ordering a pizza?
are we ready
Yeah,
to?
we've been here.
Are we ready to call it quits today with 15 minutes left?
I gotta go to work tomorrow.
So we have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to.
I make a motion.
Okay, it's Jackie and Fran.
With regret, I hope.
With regret.
Sure.
You make a
Okay,
motion that
so-
we adjourn with regret.
I do. I really enjoy.
All right, everybody in favor? All right, ayes have it, okay.